thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate this and really appreciate the turnout. And we are so excited to get back to playing soccer. It'll be fun, to be the first male pro sports teams to get back in the United States. The Women's League beat us back by a couple of weeks, but we're really happy to get back to playing soccer. Really happy the players agreed to ratify the collective bargaining agreement and allow this tournament to go forward. We just can't wait to get back to doing what we do best. And the Sounders have historically done okay in this tournament format. So I hope we can start our title defense in Orlando in early July.
Thanks, Garth. We'll turn it over to Brian for his opening thoughts.
Yeah, normally I don't open with thoughts, but I think in this time it's appropriate. I want to echo Garth's sentiments that we are, excited. The guys out on the field here, that you can feel a little bit of buzz in the training. But it's been a lot of controversy and things going on in this world that are very, very serious. And it's like, you kind of forget, or, through COVID, now in our country, the Black Lives Matter movement and all that, it's almost like, we've forgotten that last November we won a championship. And I've been trying to message the guys that, hey, you know what? We are back. We are going to defend our title. This is big news, and this is something that you guys strive to do as athletes and as Seattle Sounders and stuff like that. So I'm trying to switch. Obviously, we're not going to forget this. These things are not going to go away, but the guys, seem to be excited to get back out on the field and compete.
Thanks, Brian. This time we'll turn it over to you guys. So again, we're not going to call on you. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and try to give everyone enough space to kind of get their questions in. And we'll go around the order once here before going to follow-up. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, feel free to fire away.
Hey, Brian, can you talk about preparations and how long it's going to take you guys to ramp up and all that stuff? I mean, still out, full training hasn't happened, I don't think, and you guys are still, I'm not sure what the schedule is in terms of going down to Orlando, but talk about preparation and getting ramped up for this tournament.
Yeah, so as you guys all are aware of, we've started individual and small group trainings now for the last couple of weeks. We're very close to getting the blessing of all of the necessary, checking all the boxes as far as, league and our doctors and count, all of that sort of stuff. So we are extremely, extremely close. I'm hoping to get that, if not this week, then next week, into some full team training protocols, and we can start actually really ramping up training. Now, I would say that the preparation has gone fairly well. I think the players, even as they were cooped up, a lot of them found ways, bought stationary bikes, did their yoga sessions, their weight sessions. We tried to connect with them 3 times a week. I think a lot of them did do a good job of trying to stay in somewhat shape. And then, we hired a new fitness guy, Adam Owen, and he's really good at what he does. You add him to the already very competent staff we had, Chris Cornish, Hillary, Jake, all of the guys that take care of our athletes. I would think that we're a little bit ahead of where we started maybe on January, I believe it was 19th or 21st, when we came off a couple of months layoff after winning the title. So I think we're a little bit ahead as far as the physical preparation is concerned. It is a short lead up into the first set of games, but I'm happy with what we've seen, and I'm confident that we have a good plan in place to have the players ready for, whatever our start date is.
Hey, Brian?
Yep.
How excited are you, given what's going on in America and in the world, like you talked about, and, just the fight for injustice and systemic racism, how excited are you as a club, given the opportunity in the league, for a little bit of while where people can actually see what diversity looks like on the field as a tournament? How excited are you for this opportunity in that?
I think, Maz, there's two things there. As I'm listening to your question, there's two things. Yes, hopefully that we as sportsmen, the club, the players can go out and give some entertainment to our fans. That is absolutely number one. But the Seattle Sounders, MLS, pro athletes, they have a big platform where they can kind of tie into whatever they feel, because they're individuals. They feel how they want to be, but all of our players are very cognizant of the Black Lives Matter and some of these issues. And so we will have a platform to give the fans what they want, which is our sport and our soccer, but also then add to what they want as far as their platforms on the other issues that are going on in this country.
Thank you.
Brian, a little bit, going into that a little bit. Obviously, this morning we had a conversation with Don Garber. He said there was going to be no national anthems or nothing in Orlando, so there was going to be no fans. But if in the future there was to be some sort of demonstration from your guys on the field, how would you take that?
I would support them. Look, this is a great country for a lot of different reasons. And there's been, not to go deep in the woods here, we're talking about soccer, but the narrative now about Colin Kaepernick and was he right or was he wrong and all that sort of stuff. I mean, this is bringing to light the issues that have been kind of under the surface for many, many years. And I would be supportive if my guys want to do something, if they come together. Different scale, of course, but same principle. Look, when Roman Torres got injured in his knee, I think we went up to Vancouver and they unfurled that big banner. They said, "Where's Roman?" or something. We've done other, when Jordan went down injured, we've come together as a club and we've made certain statements as a group. We support all of it. Our LGBTQ community celebrations have been great. I mean, I think this club has always been on the forefront of supporting people's rights as individuals and as groups.
Thank you.
Other questions, guys?
Hey guys, for either one of you, Brian or Garth, do you have any concerns about Florida and the setup that's going to be there, with the fact that doesn't sound like the hotel workers are going to be tested or quarantined in the same way as the teams or the players are, or even the fact that case numbers seem to have been ticking up down there as of late?
I think that's a good question. Thanks, Tim. Look, I think it's important to establish here that there is no such thing as zero risk. There's not zero risk in Washington right now. We don't have zero cases. We're doing the best we can collectively to try to combat this terrible virus. But there's not going to be zero risk. We've had testing protocols that are going to be in place, and those will be the foundation for player health and safety, as well as staff safety when we're down in Disney. The league has spent a whole bunch of time and have their own team of medical experts that have been engaged here. Disney has a team of medical experts that's been engaged here. And I think importantly, the other fact here is the players have had their own experts engaged in this process, and they have agreed to this. So those are the guys that ultimately have to go down there and perform and have to be comfortable with it. And, they've said, hey, we're in, we're doing this. And I do want to add a couple of small points here. We MLS have exclusive use of this hotel. Each team is going to get their own floor. Each player is going to get their own room. Those may sound like small things, but from a cost perspective, those are all significant costs to try to keep our players and our staff safe. Will it be perfect? I think we're all worried about, will someone get sick down there? And it could happen. But we have good protocols in place to, if that happens, to quarantine that person and to test the people around them and hopefully be able to continue safely with the tournament.
Tim, I can answer that as a human being, as a person. I feel safe going down there.
Thank you, guys.
I have a question. This on the everything that went into this tournament We're talking players, we're talking the organization, we're talking all the operations have to be done to transport the team to Orlando. What would it be the biggest challenge that the organization face during this pandemic time, during this social moment?
I think, look, I think, Felipe, you've touched on, there are enormous challenges, from the social justice front. We held a listening exercise with our staff last week and had, really moving stories from some people of color on our staff. And I think it's, part of our responsibility moving forward is to figure out what we can do. And one of the things that we've said is that we will support our staff exercising their right to protest, and along with Black Lives Matter on the protest coming this Friday, and as I understand, potentially something next week as well. So we are trying to take proactive actions in support. We're trying to be good listeners. We're trying to be humble and educate ourselves and make ourselves better. That's been an enormous challenge. And look, in terms of the world, that's the most important challenge. In terms of we, the Sounders, in terms of this tournament, we're going to try to prioritize our players and their families and their health and safety. So as an example, MLS, as part of this negotiation, this was originally potentially a longer tournament. Players would have been away from their families for a longer period of time. MLS compromised, and they said, "Hey, let's make this a little bit shorter." They've now given us the flexibility where we don't have to travel to Orlando until a week before our first game. So we, the Sounders, are going to take the action to say we want our players home with their families in as safe an environment as possible for as long as possible. And so we are going to support them that way. And, so we're going to try to mitigate that. Now, certainly that's helped. And I want to say a big thank you to the state of Washington and to the King County Public Health Authorities because they worked with us. They worked with all the professional sports teams in Washington to put us in to exempt us from the phasing of the Washington State. And that means that we're now able potentially to move to full team training as soon as the end of this week. And that's really, really encouraging. That's a big step that wouldn't have been possible without the collaboration of all the pro sports teams in this community and the government. And so, again, with all these different challenges with our players, with our staff, with the government, with the world, we've tried to tackle all of them. And I can't say one's been any easier or any more hard, but we're trying to, gradually, slowly make the world a better place and keep our staff and our players and our fans as safe as.
Hey, Brian. This is Ben Arthur from the Seattle PI here. So, obviously, that this tournament is going to get up and going on July 8th. I was wondering about your possible concerns about the tight timeline that you guys have. As of, that's less than a month from now. And, you haven't done full training yet, like full team stuff. I was just wondering how you guys were preparing for that shortened timeline and kind of your approach to that, making sure that the guys are ready and from like a health standpoint.
So I think I touched on it a little bit earlier in my answer, but I'll give you a few more details. So again, Adam has come and, he's got a program in place. And so although we cannot play full games against each other, the Sounders have been on the forefront of sports science since we started back in 2009. And we have data that goes back to 2009 of, let's use Christian Roldan as an example. So when we signed him in 2015, we have all of his games and his physical output, his sprinting, his total distance, his decels, all that sort of stuff. So what they've done is they've started to go back in time and they give Christian this target. Okay, this is what you do in a normal game. And we're basing some of our training sessions to culminate with, last Saturday, okay, we wanted to give Christian the simulated match conditions of 60 minutes. And so we were able to devise a training session, although it wasn't against an opponent, but Christian accomplished his 6,000 meters and X amount of sprint distance and, his amount of decels and all that We tried to recreate that as best we could in the training session, which certainly, again, is a good starting point. But if, as Garth says, we get, the final little boxes checked and we're into full team training, then we will obviously ramp that up fairly quickly. We'll have inter-squad scrimmages right away. We'll make sure that we try and do as much as we can to make sure we, protect the athletes, because they're the assets of the club.
If I can jump in real quickly, just to explain who Adam is, because we haven't made a formal announcement yet about this, but Adam Owen is our new head of performance. For those folks who watched us last year, we had a gentleman named Damian Roden did an awesome job for us, and he departed at the end of the season after helping us win a championship. So we brought Adam in, had visa issues, and so he wasn't able to join us for preseason. And then, of course, the world got turned upside down. So we've not been able to make a formal announcement. You will see something formal from us. If not, most likely this week, if not this week, next week. But he's a highly, highly qualified PhD. He's worked with Benfica, with Rangers, with Celtic. He's been all over the world, in China and Poland. We really think he's just a top-notch practitioner. Has a UEFA A license in addition to all of his performance qualifications. And so we are really, really excited to add him as the head of our performance, and hopefully to continue our path as one of the leaders in performance and sports science and analytics here in MLS.
Oops, sorry, Alex.
Listen, you
Sorry.
guys, it's your show.
Nice question.
And Garth is right. Press release coming probably tomorrow. Moving on. Other questions from anybody?
Yeah, Garth. Question about following up on Tim Booth's question about testing. There were some MLS players and players across sports who expressed apprehension about returning to tourney formats and shorter seasons because of the health risk for underlying conditions. And you had Jordan Morris on the Sounders. How did you talk to him about this, and what was most significant in allaying his fears?
I would really like Jordan to speak for himself on this. He said publicly, he said on behalf of MLS, hey, I'm comfortable, I'm in favor of this. Again, this was a crucial issue in the collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players. And we have been, told, given assurances, high risk people do not have to go. It's their decision. Look, importantly in Jordan's case as well, it's not just that Jordan wants to go, but Jordan's dad is our chief medical officer, right? Dr. Morris, who's been with us for decades. And, I still recall a conversation I had with Dr. Morris early in the pandemic. And he was adamant. He said, Jordan's going to play. This is nothing for him to be afraid of. And obviously, again, that decision still is Jordan's to make. But we got early indications that medically, our medical professionals, who certainly know better than I do, as to whether or not this is safe, that they were okay with Jordan participating. And we've heard from Jordan himself to that same effect. And I think that's good enough for me.
Thanks.
And kind of following up on that too, Garth, do you know if the league is continuing to monitor the reports of those higher numbers coming out of Florida? And is there some kind of threshold of new cases that could still call this into question, or do you think it's kind of full steam ahead no matter what? And Brian, you had mentioned that you feel safe going down there, but is there a number of new cases or anything like that that could change that dynamic for you specifically?
Yeah, Matt, we have not been given any information on that front, so I don't have a lot to add. As far as we've been told the plan is if the tournament is going to go ahead. Again, I've been a ton of work has been done at the league level and at the Disney level to try to make this as safe an event as possible. And again, importantly, and this is really important, even from a Washington perspective, our players have agreed to this. So, this is not something that we told them they had to do. This is something that they agreed to, and they wanted to go and they wanted to play. And, that's hopefully those facts remain. And, look, I don't think any of us is going to stick our head in the sand and say, absolutely no matter what, there's no possibility that we'll listen to data and science. I mean, to the contrary, I think we've done the opposite. We've said consistently, we're not lobbying, here in Washington to return to play. We're not lobbying to return to full team training. We are going to, the government's going to follow the data and the science, and we are comfortable with that. And we've gotten, I think, great leadership here in our state in terms of sticking to an evidence-based conclusion. And again, Matt, you've been covering us for a number of years now too, and you know that as an organization, that's what we believe in too. Evidence-based, objective decision making, and we'll try to be consistent with that here as well.
And just to add my 2 cents, Matt, I mean, look, social distancing is very important, right? And wearing a mask and all of those sorts of things. We're going to, according to the plan, we're going to be on a resort that, yes, has some, workers coming and going, but we're kind of in a bubble. I mean, we're going to be there. This is one central location. All of us are going to practice good social distancing. Look, I'm not letting my guys go down to the beach to, spring break, whatever. They're not going there for a vacation. They're going to be in the hotel, in their rooms. We're going to try and win a soccer tournament. There's a CONCACAF Champions League berth included here. There's $1 million in prize money. I mean, they're not going down to Daytona Beach and Miami Beach or anything like that, and goofing around.
Yeah, and one little small detail, just to kind of draw out, again, there's not going to be a perfect system, but right now, even in team training, the coaches and all the support staff have to be masked up at all times, even outdoors. So they have put a lot of thought into this and are trying best. And look, it's very much in our interest to keep our staff and players safe. There's no reason that we would willingly put them in danger. We are certainly going to stay on top of this and do everything we can to keep everyone as safe as we possibly can.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Garth and Brian, I'm wondering, with everything that's going on with Major League Baseball and the NBA starting back up in late July, how much do you guys feel that this is an opportunity for the league to grow and gain new fans, being one of the only professional sports leagues going on in the country right now with potentially a ton of new eyes on the game here in America?
I think that's an exciting opportunity, Jackson. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the Reign and the National Women's Soccer League are going to come back a couple weeks before. But as I think the first male pro sport to come back, we are certainly looking at that as an opportunity. We're looking at working with Disney, working with ESPN to try to introduce ourselves to an audience that maybe hasn't seen the Sounders, maybe hasn't seen MLS before. But that said, for you guys who've done a couple of these now too. We are not rushing back here. The goal of this was not to be first to puff our chests out and say, we want to do this ahead of it. The NBA is going to come in a couple weeks behind us at the same facility. The idea was to get it right, to do it in a healthy and safe manner. And if we could do that, and then a kind of extra positive externality of that was to maybe we sample a broader audience. That's great, and look, I'm sitting at home waiting for sports to come back and watching Korean baseball that I didn't watch a lot of previously. So I do think there'll be some benefit to that, but I don't think that's the guiding principle here. I don't think we're going to come out of this and, have the impact of a World Cup and, suddenly have MLS fans in the country. It'd be nice, but I don't know that that's what anybody's expectations. I think this is a really solid bridge to get us back to soccer, to hopefully potentially resume our season playing at CenturyLink Field when we come back.
Brian, I wanted to follow up a little bit on a question that was asked a couple seconds ago about what players are going to be kind of allowed to do while they're there. 5-6
Alligator
weeks. Wrestling. Yeah, 5-6 weeks is a pretty long time to be stuck in, even a nice resort. How much thought have you given to how you're going to, manage that? I mean, I assume that's probably by a pretty lengthy amount, the longest road trip that any of your teams would have been on. I mean, there's not really a lot of easy comparisons. So I'm sure you don't want them going out and partying, but there's got to be some balance, right?
Yeah, Jeremiah, I don't know all of the details. I'll give you what I know. There's a lot more details in some of the packets. I'll give you what we are thinking about. So you are correct. But you could say that guys that have participated in the World Cup or a Copa Libertadores, stuff like that, they've been sequestered for longer amounts of times, Euros, all that sort of stuff. I think there's some players that are used to a little bit longer time away. Obviously, yes, their families can go. I mean, Roman had his family, I'm sure, when he was in the World Cup. But here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that there are other activities. Some of our guys always bring their Xboxes already on the road, but can we have a game room set up? I know MLS is setting up game rooms. They have different, bigger sponsors setting up these areas where you can play ping pong and foosball and this and that. They were trying to get, other outside activities within the resort scheduled for players and teams. We were thinking about personally, like, maybe one day having a barbecue on the facility, having, a team barbecue, and just creative stuff like that to keep the players from, yes, getting a little stir crazy, which, may or may not happen. That's one of the things that certainly we're cognizant of. But hopefully we can generate enough ideas to manage that situation.
Yeah, and just to put details around that, just from a scheduling perspective, right now it looks like a 4 to 6 week trip. We don't have the dates locked in. We don't know when we're going to play games. The draw is tomorrow. Hopefully full schedule by next week. But it looks like 4 to 6 weeks away, depending on if you get to the knockout round and how far you go in the knockout round.
Hey, Garth, I had a question. Garth, I'll just go ahead and ask the question. With the NBA also being in Orlando around that same time, were there other options, or was Disney the number one option to begin with?
Hard for me to speak to that, Andrew, just in the sense that that's a league office decision. But I know that for a fact that multiple teams submitted applications as host. Again, in the women's league, Salt Lake is wound up hosting their tournament. There were, for a while, a discussion of having 4 pods, 4 different groups where you'd have teams aggregate in those places. And ultimately, Disney is where they landed. As to exactly how we got there, that I just don't know those details. But for sure, I would say any permutation under the sun was fine. There's been an incredible amount of work over the last couple of months. Just trying to find a way to get back, and like, we're going to play 6 days of soccer in a row as a league. Like that's fun. That's for those who probably all of us on the call who see sports as a way to bring some joy back to the world. I mean, that's a cool fact. And however you get there, if you can do it safely and protect your players and the fans and the staff, then that feels like something worth doing.
Brian,
I hope I'm not taking anybody's first.
About a 4-month break, and presumably no ability to have any preseason scrimmages with other teams. What would you say about the potential quality of the games coming back into this tournament?
Well, the quality is going to be up to, how serious everybody's going to take it. And I can only speak for myself and this club and this organization. We treat every game the same. We want to win, whether it's a preseason game, MLS is back, tournament style. I think our team is very good in these tournament formats. I think our record in the playoff is testament to that. And the quality of the games are going to be high if they're competitive. And I think that CCL spot, I think the prize money, I think the guys wanting to be back, I think our players wanting to defend a championship. I think there's a lot of the coach's motivation. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why those games can be good games. Now, look, if you look at early season MLS games, I'm not gonna hide from this. I mean, yeah, sometimes games early in the season when teams are just up and running might not be a mid-season form or end of the year, traditional Sounders run into the playoffs. We might not be there, Mickey, but we're going to try. We're going to do the best we can to go down there and try and win.
Nico, I'm going to help you out. Do you have a question?
I did. I don't want to take nobody's first chance at one before I did a follow up, but I did have one for Garth, well, for Brian. Garth, I wanted to know, obviously with this pandemic and this tournament, especially right now, you're planning for the season in terms of potential new players coming in or out have to be somewhat, in a very fluid state. But have you heard anything from the league in terms of extending the transfer window? Has there been any modifications or any instructions in that regard?
Yeah. So I anticipate right now that FIFA is going to be very accommodating based on what we're being told as to, we can kind of set the transfer windows where ideally we want to have them. So it's conceivable, for example, that you might have a transfer window open for a couple of days ahead of the Disney tournament. And that honestly would be mostly, to get players in that have already been signed or, administer trades within the league because we can make all those transfer windows are open. And then if we are able to progress and play a full season on the back end of this, I would imagine there'd be a transfer window that opens, either just before that or during that, et cetera. For us at the Sounders, again, just some basic stuff, going back to the beginning of the year, we loaded up, right? We signed 3 DPs right from the get-go. We've spent all our money. It's like the borders are closed and no visas being issued right now. So, I think that it's unlikely in the short term that you're going to see the Sounders sign any players. And, we have to be cognizant too of our long-term plan. One of the things that comes out of the CBA is that the salary cap is pushed back. So what that means is that then the 2020 cap applies to 2021, right? But effectively, that means the cap goes down because all of our contracts have raises in them. So when we are cap compliant this year, same group would not be cap with no additions at all, would not be cap compliant next year. And so we have to be thoughtful about that as well. And I suspect that'll exert a downward pressure in terms of player signings as well. So look, the bad news is I don't think we're going to be able to add a lot, manipulate a whole lot. We will have some new player announcements. I won't blow Alex Caulfield's cover on those, but we do have some young kids that are coming through the system. You'll hear more about them later in the week. But I think that's going to be our focus. It's going to be that kind of level signing, with some great potential for the future. And I don't think, but the good news, what I want to get to is we actually haven't even seen our team play together yet, right? I mean, Nico Ladero has not set foot on a soccer field for 7 months. We have not seen him play with João Paulo or Gustav or Christian Roldan or Jordan. We haven't seen that group of players play together. So, one of the things that's really exciting for us is, despite being the defending champs, all this potential. We still have all these guys that we can put together and try to figure out how to play. And I think that's going to be one of the exciting things to watch in Florida, where you could watch our team just as we have on stretch runs and playoffs. We could get better every game while we're down there, and potentially our title defense, where we look at that tournament not just as 3 to 7 games, but is that the bridge to give us a foundation to get back into the season to go try to win the thing again?
Yeah, and not to bully the time, but that was basically my walkthrough to Brian was, this team played 4 games, scored 7 goals. Seemed like the offense was working despite some issues defensively. How have you seen Nico and the way he's going to fit into this offense with Raul, with Joao, with Christian playing a new position out wide, all of that coming through?
I'll keep it brief, Nico. You saw the Instagram post of Nico's smile as he was running around the soccer field. That guy is excited to play. JP is pretty darn good. You guys will love to see him. You saw a little glimpse of him, obviously, in the games in Champions League in the first couple games. Yaimar is going to be really good. And look, Garth's a bit of a salesman. He's telling you guys all this sort of stuff. He's done pretty good late in the year. There might be a little bit of cash somewhere around, and he's going to turn that into another good signing for the club. So I am happy with some of the young kids that is going to be announced soon. But don't sell him short. There'll be something. You guys just wait.
I'm almost scared to continue this call, but are there other follow-up questions?
By the way, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
That's some good stuff, guys. Thank you both. That was awesome.
Nico, thank you as always. Any other questions from the group? In all seriousness, we have plenty of time remaining, so go for it if you do.
Yeah, actually, I had
Garth, I want to comment on the facial hair. Garth, what are you going for there? Any inspiration?
I
on
like
the facial
it.
hair?
I can't claim any strategy here. Basically, what happened was I figured out that my own haircut was not going to survive months of quarantine. And with a little encouragement from my wife, you guys know I have a young family, so I have 3 young boys, and when they figured out that they had an option to shave Daddy's head, they got pretty excited about that. So we broke the clippers out from college and shaved my head, and then once we did that, I looked at some old pictures and realized last time I'd shaved my head, I'd had a goatee, and so I let's bring it back. It'll be just like college, right? And except now I look like Santa Claus. But it's beyond that, it's just I say I take my quarantine pounds that I've added, and at least maybe it elongates my face a little bit. I don't know.
I like it.
Hey,
Thank you.
you kind of mentioned this, Garth, about some potential signings coming up, but what can you say as far as how, like, obviously it's going to be a shrunken down tournament. I would imagine you're going to need to use as much roster space as possible. What is that? I assume that there's no plan to leave players that are on the first team roster behind in order to stay with the Defiance, right?
I'm seeing Coach Schmetzer shake his head, so it's ultimately his call.
We're Jeremiah. We're taking everybody. We take all the signed players with us. You never know with the new rules, 5 substitution, all that sort of stuff. Games tightly packed, one on top of each other. We'll need to have everybody there. There is obviously it's pro sports. There's a risk of an injury here or there. We're taking everybody.
And we have 26 signed players, or we will by the time Disney is announced. So.
Seems like a big hint.
Like I said, I don't want to steal. Look, in all seriousness, we waited months to announce Adam Owen. So, I mean, we got to at least give Adam a day. I'm telling you, like, wait until you guys see his bio. Like, he's really impressive. He deserves a day. Like, for what he's gone through, he's literally lived in a hotel by himself, apart from his family, for months, just planning sessions, like just waiting to come out and interact. He still hasn't had a chance even to train the team. So he gets a day, and we'll get to the kids in a little bit.
Well, you'll be assured to know that his Wikipedia page is already updated, and he's got a picture of himself in Sounders gear on his LinkedIn page. So
outstanding.
Jeremiah, you gonna invoice us for that? I love it. Who else has any questions remaining? No? Nothing? We got them all done? All right. Well, I'll close by saying thanks for everyone's time. If there are any follow-ups needed, reach out to Matt, Kelly, myself. We can get it all covered for you. And yeah, it sounds like we'll have a little bit more news this week, so stay tuned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Garth. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody. Good one.
Thanks, guys.